Hey, tonight we dive into the vast sun-baked world of ancient Egypt, where gods walked among mortals, or, at least, that's how it felt to those who worshipped them. Picture this: golden sands stretching under a blazing sun, the Nile whispering secrets through palm trees, and towering temples carved with stories of powerful deities. You're about to meet three of the most fascinating gods of this ancient world: Anubis, Osiris, and roach-wielding cosmic powers that shaped life, death, and everything in between. You'll probably learn a lot from this story, not just about Egyptian mythology, but about how humans have wrestled with the mysteries of existence for thousands of years. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Press the notification bell to update many new videos. And hey, while you're here, why not drop your location and local time in the comments? It's a fun way to connect across the globe as we journey back together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the edge of the Nile River, where the fertile floodplain meets the relentless desert. The air smells faintly of papyrus and incense, and somewhere nearby, the cry of a jackal echoes a fitting soundtrack, since the jackal-headed god Anubis is about to step into your story. But before we get there, you need to understand where these gods come from, because their origins are as mysterious and shifting as the sands themselves. Historians still argue whether the earliest Egyptian gods were linked to local nature spirits or emerged from complex tribal myths that merged as Egypt unified. One thing's clear: these deities were more than just characters in stories. They embodied forces: life, death, fertility, the sun's light that shaped the ancient Egyptians' world. Anubis, for instance, didn't start off as a well-known figure. His image as a black jackal or a man with a jackal's head connects to real animals scavenging near burial sites, which probably inspired ancient people to associate him with death and protection. Meanwhile, Osiris's roots seem tangled in tales of kingship and the afterlife, but his story also reflects the cycles of the Nile and crop's life, death and rebirth intertwined. Then there's Ra, the mighty sun god, who dominates the sky in a daily battle against darkness. His journey was so vital that Egyptians believed everything depended on his passage. If Ra failed, chaos would reign. The fascinating thing is how these gods evolved together, often overlapping roles or merging attributes. Sometimes Anubis's black jackal hides behind Osiris's green skin, symbolizing regeneration. Sometimes Ra's solar power casts light on both life and the afterlife. This blending shows how fluid and rich Egyptian mythology really was. As you trudge deeper into this world, you'll notice how the gods aren't distant or aloof. They're part of daily life, guiding the dead, ruling the living, or traveling across the sky with majestic purpose. Egyptian religion wasn't just about worship, but about making sense of existence. A cosmic map that helped people navigate their fears and hopes. And by the way, did you know that Egyptians sometimes used crocodile dung as sunscreen? Yeah, they weren't just myth makers, they were resourceful and a bit quirky too. So, as you lean back and imagine these ancient tales coming alive, keep in mind, what we think we know about these gods is always evolving. Historians still argue whether some of these stories were originally separate myths or a carefully woven single narrative created by priests to unify religious beliefs. Tonight, you're on the brink of uncovering those secrets. Ready? You step forward, following the faint, haunting howl of the jackal through the cool desert night. Anubis, the guardian of the dead, comes into focus, his sleek black head silhouetted against flickering torchlight, eyes gleaming with a calm, watchful wisdom. You're no longer just a visitor. You're part of the ancient funerary rites where Anubis stands solemnly over the sacred embalming table, his presence a bridge between the living and the dead. The scent of myrrh and natron fills the air, and you can almost feel the weight of centuries in the quiet solemnity of this moment. Anubis isn't just any god, he's the jackal-headed deity entrusted with protecting bodies and souls on their journey to the afterlife. His black fur represents both death and the fertile soil of the Nile, linking destruction to renewal. It's like the universe's way of saying, everything ends, but everything also begins anew. This paradox shapes much of Egyptian spirituality. You might picture Anubis as a dark, scary figure, but he's more like a gentle guide. Imagine a calm, slightly sarcastic undertaker who knows exactly what needs to be done but won't rush the process. He oversees the embalming process, a meticulous ritual where the dead are carefully preserved to ensure their safe passage beyond. It's kind of like ancient Egypt's version of quality control for eternity. Here's a mainstream fact for you. The process of mummification was incredibly advanced for its time, involving removal of internal organs, drying the body with natron salts, and wrapping it in linen strips. Anubis was believed to supervise all these steps, ensuring nothing was overlooked. But here's the quirky bit. Some scholars suggest that Anubis's jackal head might have originated from the black-backed jackal species, which scavenged near cemeteries and thus became associated with the dead. Others propose he could have been inspired by the fennec fox, or even jackal-like dogs bred for ritual purposes. Basically, ancient Egypt's version of what animal best screams, spooky but trustworthy. Historians still argue whether Anubis was originally a more prominent god who was later overshadowed by Osiris, or if his role was always specialized to funerary rites. Some texts show Anubis as Osiris's protector, while others suggest he once held dominion over the afterlife himself before Osiris took over. It's a bit like a divine job handover with ancient paperwork lost in the sands. One fascinating ritual involved the opening of the mouth ceremony, performed by priests wearing Anubis masks. This act was believed to restore the deceased's senses, allowing them to breathe, see, and speak in the afterlife. Can you imagine that? A ritual so elaborate, it's basically a spiritual reboot. Anubis was also depicted holding a flail or ankh, symbols of life and authority, but his most iconic attribute is the embalming knife, an ancient scalpel that signifies his practical role in preservation. You might chuckle at how practical he is, compared to some gods who just sit on thrones, judging humanity from afar. And here's a strange but true tidbit. Some ancient Egyptians believed Anubis could change shape, sometimes appearing as a full jackal, other times as a man with a jackal's head, or even blending seamlessly into the shadows when no one was watching. This fluidity made him a perfect guardian of the in-between world, neither fully living nor fully dead at night. When the stars blanket the desert sky, you imagine Anubis standing silently beside tombs, guarding sacred secrets and guiding souls to the Hall of Two Truths, where their hearts would be weighed against the feather of Mat. The jackal's howl becomes a symbol of transition, a reminder that death isn't an end but a passage into another realm. You can almost hear a dry Egyptian priest joke. Why did Anubis cross the Nile? To get to the embalming table on time. Okay, maybe they didn't joke much, but humor has a way of sneaking even into the solemnity of death. Remember that debate we mentioned about Anubis's prominence? It colors how we see his relationship with Osiris. Sometimes they're partners, sometimes rivals. Ancient narratives have room for both. Either way, Anubis's role is clear: protector, guide, embalmer, and the ultimate afterlife concierge. So, as you watch the jackal-headed god silently tending to the dead, you realize that in the mystery of death lies a deep care and respect, one that shaped a civilization's understanding of what it means to truly rest. You find yourself pulled into the tragic drama of Osiris, the once mighty king whose story is woven through Egyptian mythology like a golden thread of hope and despair. Imagine a grand palace bathed in emerald light, where Osiris reigns with wisdom and fairness. He's not just a god, he's the ideal king, beloved by his people and the very embodiment of life and death intertwined. But as you stand there, the air shifts. Shadows creep in as Set, his jealous brother, plots a betrayal that will shatter everything. Osiris's tale begins with power and prosperity, but quickly twists into tragedy. Set, the god of chaos and storms, envies Osiris's rule and crafts a cunning plan. He builds an ornate coffin, perfectly sized for Osiris, and during a feast tricks him into climbing inside. Then, in a moment both cruel and final, Set seals the coffin and casts it into the Nile. The river carries Osiris away, his body lost to the currents and the murmur of reeds. This story isn't just mythological melodrama, it's a symbolic narrative, explaining the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Osiris's death represents the end of life, but his eventual resurrection symbolizes renewal. The Egyptians believed that just as Osiris rose from the waters, so too would the land bloom again with the Nile's annual flooding, bringing fertility and life. Historians still argue whether Osiris originated as a historical figure who was later deified, or if his myth purely reflects natural cycles and spiritual ideals. Some suggest he may have been a real king whose death inspired mythic elaboration, while others see him purely as a cosmic symbol of regeneration. One quirky aspect: Osiris's skin is often depicted as green or black, colors associated with fertility and the fertile Nile silt. Imagine a god literally painted like the land he nurtures house, that for eco-friendly deity branding. After Osiris's body is lost, his devoted wife and sister Isis embarks on a desperate quest to find and restore him. She gathers the scattered pieces of his body from the riverbanks and reassembles them with magic and love. This act of devotion highlights Isis's role as a powerful protector and healer, adding emotional depth to the myth that feels almost like an ancient soap opera complete. With family drama, betrayal, and resurrection, Osiris's resurrection is more than a happy ending. It marks his transformation into the ruler of the afterlife, the judge of souls. He presides over the Hall of Two Truths, where the dead's hearts are weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. This judgment determines if the soul is worthy of eternal life or condemned to oblivion. Interestingly, some texts describe Osiris as the Lord of Silence, reflecting the quiet mystery of death. It's a reminder that some things like the afterlife remain beyond human comprehension, shrouded in sacred silence. Imagine the emotional tension in these stories. Osiris, the good king betrayed, becomes a symbol of hope for life after death. Isis's tireless devotion exemplifies love's power to overcome even the greatest loss, and Set embodies the chaotic forces that threaten harmony. It's a myth rich with themes that still resonate: family, loss, justice, and rebirth. By the way, Did you know that some ancient Egyptians believed Osiris's resurrection powers extended to their crops, ensuring good harvests every year? The god wasn't just about the afterlife, but the very pulse of the living land. And remember how we said Anubis's role was debated. Osiris's story often intersects with Anubis as his protector and guide through the underworld, reinforcing the close bond between these gods. So as you watch the scene of Osiris's betrayal and eventual resurrection unfold, you can't help but feel the ancient Egyptians' deep desire to understand death, not as an end, but as part of a grand, hopeful cycle. You lift your gaze to the blazing sun, the radiant orb that defines the very heartbeat of ancient Egypt. Ra, the sun god, commands the sky with a power so immense that Egyptians believed his daily journey brought life itself to the world. Imagine standing on a dune, watching the horizon slowly blush with dawn, as Ra's golden barca boat, carved from light, set sail across the heavens, ushering day in its wake. His presence is a blazing beacon that pushes back the darkness, yet his voyage is anything but peaceful. Ra's daily journey is a cosmic drama that unfolds in two parts: the triumphant sail across the daytime sky and the perilous descent into the underworld at night. During the day, Ra travels in his solar bark, riding the sky as a falcon-headed man crowned with a fiery sun disk. His light nurtures crops, warms the Nile waters, and fills the world with energy. But when night falls, Ra plunges into the Duatha, Egyptian underworld, shadowy realm filled with dangers and wonders alike. Here's where things get intense. Every night, Ra must confront Apophis, the monstrous serpent embodying chaos and darkness. This serpentine adversary tries to devour Ra's bark and halt the cycle of day and night. Think of it as an eternal battle of light against dark, order versus chaos. Without Ra's victory, the world would plunge into eternal night and disorder. The Egyptians saw this nightly conflict as a metaphor for life's struggles and the importance of maintaining balance, known as Mat. Historians still argue whether Ra was always considered the supreme god or if he merged with other solar deities over time, such as Amon, forming the powerful Amon-Ra. This syncretism shows how Egyptian religion adapted and evolved with changing political and social landscapes. Now, a fun, quirky fact: some Egyptians believed Ra traveled not only across the sky, but through subterranean rivers in the underworld, guiding lost souls and keeping the balance between worlds. It's almost like the original river cruise, but with divine stakes. Ra's importance went far beyond myth. Temples dedicated to him, like the great sun temple of Heliopolis, served as centers of worship, astronomy, and royal power. Pharaohs often claimed to be sons of Ra, legitimizing their rule by associating themselves with his divine authority. Imagine a king flexing his spiritual muscles by basically saying, "I'm the sun's chosen one." The imagery of Ra solar bark is everywhere, from wall paintings to elaborate jewelry, symbol not just power, but the relentless passage of time and the promise of renewal each dawn. Egyptians saw the sun's journey as a symbol of life's rhythm, reminding them that even after the darkest nights, light would return. Here's a slightly strange one. Some texts describe Ra as having a terrifying eye that could burn enemies to ash, a reminder that gods weren't just benevolent caretakers but could unleash divine wrath. So, don't try to outshine Ra on your next Egyptian-themed costume party. Interestingly, the sun's daily cycle inspired the Egyptian calendar, dividing the year into seasons linked to the Nile's flooding and Ra's light, which sustained all living things. It's a reminder that mythology and practical life were deeply intertwined. So, as you watch Ra's solar bark trace its path across the sky and descend into shadowy depths, you see a god who is both life-giver and warrior, a symbol of the eternal struggle to maintain balance in a chaotic world. It's a cosmic journey you're lucky to witness well, at least in story form. You're beginning to see how Anubis, Osiris, and Ra aren't just solo performers, but part of a tangled, divine family drama that spans the heavens, earth, and underworld. Picture a sprawling cosmic family tree where gods take on multiple roles: siblings, lovers, sometimes even rivals, their stories twisting like vines around one another. It's complicated, but that's part of the fun. At the top sits Ra, the mighty sun god, often considered the ultimate father figure of this divine clan. From him sprung numerous offspring and generations of gods who ruled various aspects of the world. Osiris, in many versions, is either a son or a great-grandson of Ra, and his reign as king of the living and the dead ties closely to Ra, Isis Allah Dominion. Then there's Anubis, who in some myths is described as the son of Nephthys, and Osiris or even Ra himself, depending on which story you ask. Talk about family secrets. Historians still argue whether these familial connections were invented to unify different regional cults or reflect older, pre-dynastic beliefs. The shifting genealogies reveal how Egyptian religion evolved, blending local gods into a complex pantheon. Imagine trying to keep a family reunion straight when everyone has multiple parents and secret identities. Anubis's relationship to Osiris is particularly interesting. In some myths, Anubis is the devoted guardian and embalmer of Osiris, highlighting a bond that's less about rivalry and more about sacred duty. He's the one who prepares Osiris for his afterlife role, literally holding his hand, or rather, his jackal head through the transformation. This partnership symbolizes the intimate link between death's protection and resurrection. Osiris's wife, Isis, is the star in this divine soap opera, acting as the glue that holds the family together. Her devotion to Osiris's resurrection and her role as a mother goddess to their son Horus extend the family saga, showing how these gods embody cycles of life, death, and rebirth on multiple levels. Ra's position as the patriarch god means he often oversees or interacts with these family members from his solar throne, maintaining cosmic order. Yet, he also sometimes merges with other gods, like Amun, creating powerful composite deities that reflect political changes and evolving beliefs. This fusion illustrates how Egyptian religion was fluid, adapting to the needs of its people. On a quirkier note, some ancient texts hint at occasional squabbles among the gods' family drama involving jealousy, power struggles, and even divine shape-shifting. It's a mythological soap opera with far higher stakes than your typical family feud. For example, Set's betrayal of Osiris introduces tension not only between brothers, but between order and chaos, a theme that runs deep throughout Egyptian stories. It's like the divine family's version of the one who just can't get along. The divine family tree isn't just about lineage. It represents the interconnectedness of natural and supernatural forces: the sun's light, the fertile land, death, and rebirth, all personified through gods who feel surprisingly human in their emotions and conflicts. Remember the earlier debate about Anubis's origin. His shifting parentage within the family tree underscores how the ancient Egyptians used these stories to explain complex theological ideas and legitimize various cults. In some regions, Anubis was king of the dead, Elsewhere, he was subordinate to Osiris, showing how myths could adapt to local traditions. By weaving together these relationships, you begin to see a rich tapestry where gods play multiple roles: protectors, tricksters, lovers, each essential to the eternal balance of the cosmos. So, as you ponder this divine family reunion, you realize that the stories of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra are less about static figures and more about living, evolving forces that mirror human experience in all its messy glory. You stand at the threshold of the afterlife, where the fate of every soul hinges on a moment of divine judgment. The ancient Egyptians believed that after death, you wouldn't just wander aimlessly, but would face a solemn trial in the Hall of Two Truths, presided over by Osiris himself. Imagine the scene: a vast, shadowy chamber where your heart, yes, your very own heart, is weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and cosmic balance. This isn't just a quirky, ancient trial. It's the ultimate pass or fail, determining whether you earn eternal life or face oblivion. Your heart rests on one side of a giant scale, beating anxiously, while Mat's feather sits delicately on the other. If your heart is lighter or equal in weight, it means you've lived truthfully and justly. But if it's heavier, burdened by lies and wrongdoings, the fearsome creature Ammit awaits her, terrifying hybrid beast, part lion, hippopotamus, and crocodile, ready to devour your soul, erasing your existence forever. That's some serious game over stuff. This judgment scene, one of the most iconic in Egyptian mythology, reveals how deeply the Egyptians valued morality and truth. Life was not only about surviving the desert sun or the Nile's floods, but about living in harmony with Mat, the principle that kept the universe ordered and balanced. In a way, your actions on earth echo into eternity, literally tipping the scales. Historians still argue whether this concept of judgment evolved over time, or was always central to Egyptian belief. Some scholars suggest it became prominent during the New Kingdom period, reflecting social changes and the rising importance of personal ethics. Others see its roots stretching much further back, hinting at a continuous tradition down. For a quirky tidbit, Egyptians believed that the heart was the seat of intelligence and emotion, not the brain, which they discarded during mummification. So, your brain might have been tossed out, but your heart was the star witness in your afterlife trial. Kind of makes you wonder if our hearts are smarter than we think. Anubis plays a crucial role here as well. He's the one who guides the soul to the weighing ceremony, and often depicted adjusting the scales or comforting the deceased. Think of him as the courtroom bailiff, making sure the trial runs smoothly and fairly. Osiris, meanwhile, sits majestically on his throne, embodying justice and mercy. His green skin symbolizes rebirth and the fertile Nile silt, reinforcing the idea that passing this trial leads to new life beyond death. The ceremony is more than just a spiritual checkpoint that reflects ancient Egypt's values and fears, showing how the afterlife was a continuation of earthly ethics. You're reminded that the gods weren't distant rulers, but active participants in maintaining balance. Here's a modern connection. Some scholars compare this weighing of the heart to the moral judgments found in other cultures and religions, raising questions about universal human concerns regarding justice and the soul's fate. It's a debate that's far from settled, so, as you imagine your heart hovering above the scales, you realize that this moment of judgment captures humanity's eternal hope that truth and goodness will ultimately triumph, granting peace and renewal. You find yourself stepping closer to the symbols and artifacts that represent Anubis's sacred role in guiding souls and protecting the dead. It's not just his jackal head or the eerie black color that sets him apart. It's the countless objects and signs tied to him, telling a story of death, preservation, and the sacred rituals that kept ancient Egypt's promise of eternal life alive. Imagine walking through an ancient tomb, fingers lightly tracing the smooth curves of canopic jars, or watching priests carefully wrapping a body in linen, the soft rustle echoing through the still temple air. These are the tools of Anubis's divine trade, canopic jars. Those distinctive vessels used to store the deceased's internal organs are intimately linked to Anubis. Each jar was guarded by one of the 4 sons of Horus, but Anubis himself was believed to oversee the entire embalming process. It's almost like he was the project manager of ancient funerary care, making sure each step was completed to perfection. The jars weren't just containers, they were magical safeguards, protecting parts of the body so the soul could be whole in the afterlife. You might smile at the fact that the lids of these jars often depicted the heads of the 4 sons: human, baboon, falcon, and jackal, the last being a direct nod to Anubis's protective presence. It's a clever way to blend divine watchfulness with practical embalming tasks. Another iconic symbol is the flail and crook. Although more commonly associated with Osiris and pharaohs, sometimes Anubis is shown carrying embalming knives or scepters, underscoring his role as both protector and ritual specialist. The embalming knife, in particular, is a reminder that Anubis was hands-on. He wasn't just a distant god, but a divine surgeon, ensuring the body's sanctity. Here's a fascinating historical fact. The embalming process could take up to 7 days, a lengthy and complex ritual involving removal of the brain. Yes, they literally pulled it out through the nose, and preservation with natron salts. Anubis's presence during these rituals wasn't just symbolic. It was believed to be necessary to ward off evil and guarantee a safe journey. Now for something quirky. Some ancient texts describe Anubis as having the ability to create illusions, or even animate mummies to protect tombs, a spooky but intriguing notion that has inspired countless modern mummy movies. Imagine ancient Egyptians telling ghost stories about their jackal-headed guardian coming to life in the dark. Historians still argue whether some of Anubis's attributes, especially those linked to magic and protection, evolved from earlier local deities, or if they were developed fully during the height of Egyptian funerary culture. It's like tracing the evolution of a superhero's origin story. You can also spot Anubis's image on funerary papyri, most famously the Book of the Dead, which served as a guide for souls navigating the underworld. His image reassures the deceased that they are protected, watched over by a god who knows death intimately and respects the sacred passage. Walking through this symbolic landscape, you realize that Anubis is a god of paradoxes, associated with death yet embodying protection, feared yet trusted, otherworldly but deeply involved in the very human concern of preserving memory and identity beyond death. And yes, as you ponder these sacred symbols, you can almost hear a whispered joke from a bored ancient embalmer, Anubis's favorite tool. The rap star technique. Okay, it's a bit of a stretch, but even the solemn had a sense of humor in this sacred realm of symbols and ritual tools. Anubis stands not just as a figure in mythology, but as a guardian of memory, a master of transitions, and a reminder that death, while inevitable, can be met with dignity and care. The air thickens as you enter a verdant landscape beyond the earthly realm, where Osiris reigns supreme not just as a god, but as the eternal king of the afterlife. His role is more than symbolic. It's foundational to Egyptian beliefs about what happens after death. Imagine Osiris seated on a throne carved from green stone, his skin the color of fresh Nile silt, crowned with the white Atef crown and holding the crook and flail symbols of kingship and fertility. He is calm, majestic, and profoundly hopeful, embodying the promise that death is not the end, but a gateway to rebirth. Osiris's kingship extends beyond the living world into the domain of the dead, where he judges souls and ensures the renewal of life. His story represents the cyclical nature of existence, the death of the old and the birth of the new, the flood and the seedling. You can almost smell the damp earth and hear the gentle ripple of the Nile as it flows, bringing life to parched lands. One major historical fact: Osiris's myth deeply influenced Egyptian agricultural practices. The annual flooding of the Nile, which deposited nutrient-rich silt on the fields, was seen as Osiris's own death and resurrection, a divine cycle ensuring fertile soil and plentiful harvests. It's the perfect cosmic metaphor that linked divine power to everyday survival. Yet, Osiris's role is more than a symbol. He was the divine judge and protector of souls, presiding over the hall of two truths where hearts were weighed against the feather of Mat. This reinforces his connection to justice, morality, and the ultimate fate of humanity. Scholars still debate whether Osiris was originally a vegetation deity, or a mortal king who was mythologized into a god, reflecting the blending of history and religion in ancient Egypt. This ambiguity adds depth to his character. He's both relatable and divine. A god you can almost believe walked the earth. There's a quirky detail worth noting. Osiris's resurrection is often associated with the Djed pillar, a symbol of stability that looked like a column with crossbars. This pillar became a powerful emblem in Egyptian culture, representing the backbone of Osiris and, by extension, the strength of life itself. In rituals and festivals dedicated to Osiris, participants reenacted his death and resurrection, bringing the myth to life and renewing communal bonds. The most famous was the Feast of Koyak, a celebration involving symbolic planting of seeds, dramatizations, and prayers for fertility. Imagine an ancient festival that was part theater, part agricultural writer community's way of connecting with the divine. Osiris's green skin also symbolizes regeneration and fertility, linking him to the cycles of nature. His role as king of the dead isn't grim, but hopefully reassurance that life continues beyond the physical dot in art. Osiris is often shown wrapped like a mummy, signifying his death and rebirth. His serene expression and regal posture emphasize his status as a just ruler and guardian of the dead. It's a visual promise that even in death, dignity and order prevail. Here's a light-hearted thought. Imagine ancient Egyptians telling kids that Osiris was the first mummy to ever make a comeback. It's like the original resurrection story with less Hollywood drama and more sacred significance. So, as you stand in Osiris's verdant realm, you grasp why he remains one of the most beloved and enduring gods, offering hope, justice, and renewal in a world that constantly changes. As you rise from Osiris's verdant afterlife kingdom, your eyes are drawn upward toward the brilliant solar temples where Ra's presence is felt most powerfully. These temples weren't just places of worship, they were centers of cosmic energy, political authority, and astronomical observation. Imagine the towering columns of Heliopolis or the majestic structures at Abu Simbel, bathed in golden light during the solstice, designed so Ra's rays would penetrate deep into the sanctuaries. Here, priests and pharaohs alike sought to honor the sun god whose daily journey governed time, life, and order. Ra's worship was central to Egyptian religious life, with rituals timed precisely to the sun's path. Dawn marked the sun god's birth, noon was his peak power, and sunset his descent into the underworld. Festivals often involved hymns, offerings, and elaborate ceremonies designed to ensure Ra's safe passage and continued favor. These celebrations were both deeply spiritual and politically significant, reinforcing the pharaoh's divine right to rule as son of Ra. One mainstream fact: the Sun Temple at Heliopolis was one of the oldest and most important centers of Ra's worship, with priests maintaining sacred fires and conducting rituals day and night. The temple's architecture symbolized the rays of the sun, and it was a hub for solar theology. Here's a quirky detail. Some temples featured solar boats buried nearby ritual vessels meant to carry Ra's spirit through the heavens and the underworld. Think of it as the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a cosmic Uber service, ensuring Ra's safe travels. Historians still debate the extent to which Ra's worship was unified across Egypt or varied regionally, with local solar deities sometimes blending attributes with Ra. The rise of Amun-Ra as a composite god illustrates how political power and theology intertwined, adapting to Egypt's changing landscape. The pharaoh's role as Ra's earthly representative meant that temples served not just religious but administrative functions, with priesthoods managing land, resources, and education. This close relationship between religion and governance ensured Ra's light shone in both spiritual and practical realms. Artists captured Ra's divine power with vivid imagery: the falcon-headed god crowned with a solar disk, often surrounded by the Urius serpent symbolizing protection and royalty. Scenes depicted his daily voyage and battles against Apophis, reinforcing his role as a cosmic warrior. Here's a fun ancient Egyptian joke you might appreciate. Why did Ra bring a ladder to the temple? To reach new heights of worship. Okay, maybe the humor hasn't aged perfectly, but the Egyptians loved puns and wordplay as much as anyone. Ra's temples were also centers for learning, where astronomy and timekeeping flourished. The Egyptians developed calendars based on the sun's cycles, linking Ra's journey to agriculture and civic life. It's a reminder that myth and science were not separate but part of the same quest for understanding. As you walk among these majestic temples, you feel the pulse of a civilization whose life depended on the sun's light and the rituals honoring Ra's eternal journey. Divine dance between light and shadow that shaped everything. You find yourself stepping into the grand halls of a pharaoh's palace, where the line between mortal ruler and divine god blurs in a spectacular fusion of power and belief. Pharaohs weren't just kings, they were living embodiments of gods especially. Osiris, Anubis, and Ra walking proof that divine authority flowed through Egypt's veins. Imagine the golden throne rooms, towering statues, and intricate hieroglyphs declaring the ruler as the son of Ra, the earthly representative of cosmic order. Pharaohs used their divine association strategically, weaving themselves into the mythological tapestry to legitimize their reign. They adopted symbols linked to these gods: the crook and flail of Osiris, the solar disk of Ra, and the protective imagery of Anubis convey power, wisdom, and a sacred right to rule. This wasn't just political propaganda. It was a profound religious expression that shaped Egyptian society's structure and values. One widely accepted fact: the title Son of Ra was central to royal ideology, connecting the pharaoh directly to the sun god and reinforcing his role as the bringer of order and justice. This relationship was emphasized during coronation rituals and public ceremonies, ensuring the king's divine status was clear to all. But here's a quirky twist. Some pharaohs went a bit overboard, commissioning themselves as gods on earth, to the point where their mortuary temples rivaled those of the gods. Akhenaten, for instance, famously elevated the sun disk Aten as the sole deity and styled himself as its unique, sun-changing Egyptian. Religious history forever. Historians still argue about how deeply ordinary Egyptians believed in their pharaoh's divine status versus seeing it as political theater. Did they truly worship their king as a god, or was it a clever way to maintain social order? Probably a bit of both. Anubis's iconography was often used in funerary contexts for royalty, emphasizing the pharaoh's protection in death. Osiris's myth gave pharaohs a model for afterlife resurrection, promising eternal life beyond their earthly reign. Meanwhile, Ra's solar symbolism underscored the pharaoh's role as the living source of light and life. Pharaohs also commissioned elaborate tombs and pyramids, designed to facilitate their journey to the afterlife, with priests performing rituals, invoking these gods' powers to protect and resurrect the king. You can almost hear the chatter of court officials planning rituals to keep the cosmic balance intact. On a lighter note, you might imagine a royal court jester cracking a joke about the pharaoh needing a new solar-powered chariot to keep up with Ra. It's a reminder that even divine kings had to navigate the absurdities of mortal life. This fusion of divine myth and earthly rule created a system where religion and politics were inseparable, influencing art, law, and daily life. The pharaoh's divine role wasn't just about personal glory, but about maintaining the cosmic order that kept chaos at bay. So, as you walk the marble floors of this divine kingdom, you realize that the power of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra extends beyond myths. It was a living force that shaped an entire civilization's identity and destiny. You drift now into the mysterious realm of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, a labyrinthine place where the souls of the dead journey through shadowy rivers, fiery gates, and magical creatures before reaching Osiris's throne. This isn't just a spooky afterlife, but a complex spiritual landscape filled with symbolism, trials, and divine interventions. Picture flickering torchlight illuminating carved walls, where spells from the Book of the Dead hover like protective mantras, guiding souls safely through the maze. The Duat is a place of transformation and challenge. It's where Ra's solar bark battles Apophis, and where Anubis escorts and protects the departed. This journey is essentially a test of worthiness and endurance. Souls must navigate deadly obstacles, face judgment, and overcome chaos to reach eternal peace. A mainstream fact: the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and instructions, was placed in tombs to help the deceased navigate the Duat successfully. It's like an ancient survival guide to the afterlife, complete with warnings about demons, advice for dealing with judges, and magical incantations. Quirky tidbit: some spells describe bizarre monsters and serpents with multiple heads and eyes, guarding gates or lurking in the shadows. These mythical creatures might seem scary, but they represent fears and challenges the soul must conquer. Enchant, psychological metaphors, if you will. Historians still debate the precise geography of the Duat and whether it was ever considered a physical place or purely spiritual concept. Some believe it reflected underground Nile caverns, others see it as a cosmic space between worlds. Anubis's role in the duat is crucial. He guides souls, performs rituals to ensure safe passage, and assists in the heart-weighing ceremony. His presence reassures the deceased that, even in the darkest moments, protection remains. Ra's nightly journey through the duat also symbolizes the sun's rebirth. The sun god's passage through the underworld mirrors the soul's voyage, both emerging renewed at dawn. The duat's complex imagery influenced Egyptian art and literature for centuries, inspiring endless retellings and interpretations. It's a spiritual map filled with danger and hope, a place where the boundaries between life and death blur. And just imagine the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a travel advisory warning: beware of the serpent Apophis, keep your spells ready, and don't forget your Anubis escort. As you contemplate this shadowy realm, you realize the duat reflects not just ancient beliefs about death, but a universal human quest to find meaning beyond the visible world. You're now immersed in the grand temple rituals where the worlds of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra converge, a place where gods and mortals meet in elaborate ceremonies designed to maintain cosmic order. Imagine the buzz of activity, priests clad in linen robes chanting hymns, the scent of incense curling upward, and sacred statues gleaming under flickering torchlight. These rituals weren't just performances, they were vital acts believed to keep the universe balanced, ensuring the sun's rise, the Nile's flood, and the safe passage of souls. In the temple's heart, Anubis takes center stage during funerary rites. His jackal-headed visage watches over the embalming process, a solemn reminder that death must be met with care and respect. You can almost hear the low hum of priests reciting spells from the Book of the Dead, their voices weaving protection around the newly embalmed body. Anubis is not a distant god, but an active participant in the transformation from life to afterlife, a reassuring presence amid the uncertainty. Osiris's influence saturates the rituals as well. Priests reenact his death and resurrection, dramatizing the eternal cycle of decay and renewal. These ceremonies are both spiritual and communal, uniting participants in a shared hope for fertility and rebirth. The green jade pillar, symbolizing Osiris's backbone and the stability of life, stands prominently as a focal point, reminding everyone that order triumphs over chaos. Meanwhile, Ra's solar journey is celebrated through hymns and offerings. At dawn and dusk, temples are designed to align with the sun's path, allowing rays to illuminate sacred statues in moments charged with divine power. Pharaohs participate in these rituals to affirm their role as sons of Ra, bridging heaven and earth. The sun's light becomes a tangible force in these ceremonies, a daily renewal of cosmic harmony. Here's a historical fact. Many temples had an inner sanctum where only priests and the pharaoh could enter, believed to be the dwelling place of the god's spirits. These hidden chambers were the nexus of divine-human interaction, where sacred objects like the solar bark or Osiris's effigy were kept and venerated. A quirky note: some temple rituals involved priests donning animal masks, jackals, falcons, crocodiles, bringing the gods' forms to life. It was a kind of divine cosplay, intended to blur the lines between mortal and deity during sacred acts. Historians still argue about how much ordinary Egyptians understood these rituals versus simply participating in them out of tradition and faith. Some suggest the elaborate ceremonies helped solidify social cohesion and reinforce the pharaoh's authority more than they strictly focused on theological precision. The festivals dedicated to these gods, like the Opet festival or the Feast of Koyak, were moments when myth and reality intertwined, creating vibrant expressions of belief. Music, dance, and processions brought temples and cities alive, making the gods present in the daily lives of the people. Anubis's role in funerary rites complemented Osiris's position as judge and resurrector, while Ra's solar power symbolized the eternal cycle sustaining all life. Together, their worship formed a spiritual ecosystem that touched every aspect of Egyptian existence. You might chuckle, imagining a priest accidentally wearing the wrong animal mask and getting some puzzled looks. Sorry, today's Anubis, not Horus. Humor, after all, was never absent from even the most solemn rituals. Walking through these temple ceremonies, you grasp how religion in ancient Egypt was an immersive sensory experience, one that combined sight, sound, scent, and touch to connect mortals with the divine. So, as you watch the sacred dance of gods and humans unfold, you realize that these rituals were more than tradition. They were the heartbeat of a civilization that saw divinity in every sunrise, every flood, and every whispered prayer. You find yourself drawn deeper into the mythology surrounding Osiris, this time focusing on his son, Horus, the falcon-headed god who embodies kingship, protection, and the fierce struggle for justice. Picture a desert horizon at dusk, where Horus takes flight, his sharp eyes scanning the land, ready to defend his father's legacy and restore order after Set's chaos. The story of Horus is one of vengeance, courage, and ultimately, rightful ruler, tale that echoes through Egypt's history and royal lineage. Horus's battle with Set is a legendary saga filled with twists, tricks, and epic confrontations. After Set murdered Osiris, Horus grew to challenge him, not just in brute strength but through cunning and perseverance. This struggle between order and chaos, good and evil, played out both in myth and in the political reality of Egypt, where kings claimed Horus's name and protection to legitimize their power. One historical fact: the pharaohs were often referred to as Horus in their lifetime, emphasizing their role as living gods tasked with maintaining Mat, the cosmic balance, and defending Egypt from chaos. This link between Horus and kingship was central to the Egyptian understanding of governance and divine right. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some myths, Horus loses an eye during the fight with Set, which later becomes the Eye of Horus, a powerful symbol of protection, healing, and restoration. The eye was believed to ward off evil and was worn as an amulet by ancient Egyptians, kind of like a lucky charm but with serious spiritual clout. Historians still debate the origins of Horus's myth and whether it evolved from earlier local gods or was a later composite figure representing royal authority and divine protection. The blending of his story with that of other falcon deities shows how Egyptian mythology adapted and merged over time. Horus's image as a falcon soaring above the Nile is rich with symbolism. Falcons are swift, sharp-edged hunters, perfect metaphors for vigilance and guardianship. This bird-like deity was also connected to the sky and the sun, linking him indirectly to Ra's solar power and reinforcing the interconnectedness of the gods. The epic battle between Horus and Set isn't just mythological drama. It represents the eternal fight to uphold justice and order in the face of destructive forces. In some versions, the gods convene to judge the contest, ultimately declaring Horus the rightful ruler victory that restores harmony to the cosmos. In Egyptian art, Horus is often shown with his iconic falcon head, donning the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, symbolizing his role as a unifier of the land. This imagery wasn't just religious, but deeply political, used to communicate the pharaoh's power and legitimacy. You might grin imagining ancient storytellers adding a bit of humor to the tale, like Set grumbling after losing, "Next time, I'm bringing back up," reminding us that even divine conflicts had a relatable human edge. Horus's role extends beyond battles and kingship. He's also a protector of the innocent and a symbol of renewal. His myth encourages resilience and hope, qualities Egyptians prized amid the harsh realities of desert life and political upheaval. So, as you watch Horus soar into the sky, falcon wings spread wide, you see more than a god, you see the embodiment of justice, protection, and the enduring human desire for balance and order. You're drifting now into the mysterious realm of Egyptian funerary art and texts, a place where the stories of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra come alive in vivid images and powerful spells. Imagine yourself gazing at the painted walls of a tomb, hieroglyphs shimmering under flickering torchlight, scenes of gods and mortals intertwined in the journey from death to rebirth. These artworks and writings weren't just decorative, they were essential guides to the afterlife, a roadmap ensuring that souls could navigate the treacherous path ahead. One of the most famous texts is the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells, prayers, and instructions designed to help the deceased overcome obstacles in the underworld and achieve eternal life. You can picture the scribes meticulously copying these spells onto papyrus scrolls, each word carrying immense power. This text illustrates the intertwined roles of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra. Anubis as protector and guide, Osiris as judge and and Ra as the life-giving sun whose daily journey guarantees renewal, a mainstream fact. The Book of the Dead was often customized for the individual, with spells selected or omitted depending on status, wealth, and personal beliefs. It was an ancient equivalent of a spiritual survival kit, tailored to the unique needs of the departed. A quirky tidbit: some spells include amusing or bizarre instructions, such as how to avoid being eaten by crocodiles or how to persuade river demons to let you pass. These fantastical elements reveal the Egyptians' imaginative approach to the unknown, blending fear with hope. Historians still debate whether the spells were purely religious or had practical ritual functions as well. Some suggest that the texts were used in ceremonies by priests, while others argue they were more symbolic, reflecting broader cultural values. The tomb walls often depict Anubis weighing the heart against the feather of Mat, a moment heavy with tension and hope. These images reinforce the moral dimension of Egyptian religion, reminding the living to uphold truth and justice. You can almost feel the stillness in the room as the scale balances, fate hanging in the balance. Osiris appears frequently, seated regally with his green skin and white crown, symbolizing resurrection and eternal life. His serene expression offers comfort, promising that death is not an end but a transformation. This iconography was a constant reassurance for the dead and their families. Ra's solar bark is also depicted, sometimes traveling through the night sky or battling the serpent Apophis. These images symbolize the cyclical nature of life and death, the perpetual fight between light and darkness. The sun's journey mirrors the soul's quest for rebirth and continuity. Ancient Egyptian artists employed a distinctive style that combined realism with symbolism. Faces are often shown in profile, bodies in a rigid pose. But the colors and details convey deep meaning: green for fertility, black for the fertile Nile soil, gold for divinity. This visual language speaks volumes about their worldview. You might chuckle imagining an ancient artist complaining about getting the proportions right, grumbling, "Another set of perfect eyes, and I still can't find my brush." Humor probably softened the weight of these sacred commissions. These artworks weren't static, but part of an ongoing dialogue between the living and the dead. Families commissioned tomb paintings and texts to maintain connections, honor their ancestors, and secure blessings. It's a beautiful reminder that these myths and rituals were lived experiences, not just stories on a page. So, as you trace the hieroglyphs and marvel at the painted scenes, you step into a world where art and spirituality converge, a world that preserves the eternal dance of life, death, and divine power in vibrant color and sacred text. You now step into the shadowy yet fascinating world of ancient Egyptian magic, where the gods Anubis, Osiris, and Ra wielded not just divine power but mystical energies that influenced both the mortal and spiritual realms. Imagine yourself in a quiet chamber filled with amulets, scrolls, and ritual tools, the air thick with incense and whispers of incantations. Magic, or Heka, as the Egyptians called it, wasn't just superstition, was a vital force that maintained cosmic balance, protected the living and dead, and ensured the smooth functioning of the universe. Anubis was often invoked in magical rituals related to death and protection. His jackal form symbolized guardianship over tombs, and amulets bearing his image were worn to ward off evil spirits. Picture priests reciting powerful spells to animate funerary statues or safeguard sacred spaces, their voices steady and rhythmic. Anubis's magic was practical and protective, focused on preserving life's sanctity beyond death. A mainstream historical fact, many spells found in funerary texts, including the Book of the Dead, were intended to activate magical protections and ensure the deceased's successful passage through the underworld. These spells combine ritual words with symbolic gestures, illustrating the Egyptians' belief in the tangible power of spoken magic. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some magical texts included instructions on turning into animals, like birds or crocodiles, to escape danger or spy on enemies, almost like ancient shape-shifting spells. It's fun to imagine an ancient Egyptian wizard sneaking around as a heron, dodging bureaucratic trouble. Osiris's magic centered on resurrection and fertility. His power was invoked in rituals meant to renew the land and bring abundance. The famous Jed pillar symbolized his backbone and stability, and magical ceremonies aimed to reinforce this stability in both nature and society. Osiris's magic was about transformation and hope, promising that death was only a passage to new life. Ra's magic was solar and fiery, linked to his role as the life-giving sun. His eye was a symbol of wrath and protection, able to scorch enemies and defend the cosmic order. Priests performed rituals invoking Ra's power to combat chaos, often using fire and light as symbolic weapons. Ra's magic was majestic and awe-inspiring, a reminder of divine strength. Historians still debate how much of ancient Egyptian magic was integrated with religion versus existing as a separate practice. Some argue that Heka was an inherent part of the god's nature, while others see it as a tool humans could harness with the god's permission. This ambiguity highlights the blurred lines between faith, ritual, and mysticism. Ancient Egyptians believed that magic worked best when combined with knowledge, ritual purity, and precise timing, often tied to celestial events and the cycles of the sun and moon. This belief linked magic closely with the worship of Ra and the other gods, creating a holistic spiritual system. You might smile, imagining a priest accidentally mispronouncing a spell, causing a harmless but unexpected puff of smoke or a sudden gust of wind. Ancient magical bloopers, if you will. Magic in ancient Egypt was deeply practically used for healing, protection, agriculture, and even love, showing that the divine forces of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra were accessible in everyday life. It's a reminder that ancient spirituality was vibrant and interactive, not distant or aloof. So, as you hold a magical amulet or whisper a sacred spell, you connect with a timeless tradition where gods and humans dance together in a world of mystery, power, and hope. You find yourself in the golden glow of the sun, tracing the paths where Ra's light touches earth and sky, and discovering how this mighty god shaped not only ancient beliefs but daily Egyptian life. Imagine standing at dawn on the banks of the Nile, feeling the warmth spread as Ra rises, lighting fields where farmers toil and artisans craft intricate jewelry. Ra's presence isn't just divine, it's practical, sustaining life, marking time, and inspiring awe. The sun's daily journey was seen as Ra's voyage in his solar bark, a celestial boat ferrying him across the sky by day and through the underworld by night. This cycle symbolized the eternal battle between light and darkness, order and chaos. You can almost hear the chants of priests invoking Ra's protection as they envision the sun's nightly fight against Apophis, the monstrous serpent threatening cosmic harmony. One solid fact: the ancient Egyptian calendar was based on solar and lunar cycles, closely tied to Ra's journey. The heliacal rising of the star Sirius, heralding the Nile's flood, was especially significant and celebrated with great fervor. It was a cosmic signal that life and renewal were assured. Now for something quirky. Some Egyptians believed Ra had multiple forms: a ram-headed god at times, or a mighty bull reflecting the sun's changing power through the day. It's like Ra had a whole wardrobe for different occasions, from gentle dawn to scorching noon. Historians still debate how these shifting depictions influenced political power. For instance, the merging of Ra with Amun into Amun-Ra during the New Kingdom symbolized both religious unification and centralized authority. The flexibility of Ra's image shows how theology adapted to historical needs. Ra's influence stretched beyond religion into art and literature. Poets composed hymns praising the sun's light. Farmers timed their work by its course. An artist depicted Ra with radiant solar discs and protective serpents curling around him. This imagery reassured Egyptians that despite darkness, life would always return. You might smile at the idea that ancient Egyptians effectively invented solar-powered everything. Centuries before solar panels were a thing. Need a light? Call Ra. Their joke, probably. Ra's importance also influenced Egyptian kingship. Pharaohs were considered sons of Ra, inheriting his power and responsibility to uphold Mat, or cosmic order. This divine connection legitimized their rule and tied the fate of the land directly to the sun's favor. Temples dedicated to Ra were architectural marvels designed to capture sunlight. Some structures aligned perfectly with solstices, turning sunlight into a divine spotlight on statues of the god. This blending of astronomy and faith created spaces that felt alive with celestial energy. Ra's daily battle with Apophis can be seen as a metaphor for human struggle against chaos and fear. The victory of light each morning brought comfort and hope, a spiritual reset that sustained generations. As you bask in Ra's golden light, you understand why this god wasn't just worshipped, but celebrated as the very essence of life, power, and renewal. The blazing heart at the center of ancient Egypt's world. You find yourself stepping into the quiet but sacred moments of Egyptian funerary rites, where the presence of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra intertwines to guide the dead toward eternal life. Picture a solemn procession moving through a temple's shadowed halls. Priests chant ancient spells, mourners wail softly, and the air is thick with the scent of myrrh and lotus. The rituals are elaborate, carefully orchestrated to honor the dead and ensure their safe passage through the perilous underworld. Anubis takes center stage, here as the protector of the embalming process. You can almost hear the careful wrapping of linen strips, the gentle placement of amulets, and the murmured prayers meant to awaken the body's spiritual guardian. His jackal-headed form symbolizes watchfulness over the tomb, guarding against desecration and evil spirits. The embalming itself was a lengthy process, sometimes taking up to 70 days, a testament to the Egyptians' devotion to preserving the body for the afterlife. A mainstream fact, mummification involved removing the brain through the nose. A strange but essential step, as the brain was considered less important than the heart, which housed the soul and intellect. Anubis's role was crucial in overseeing this process, sanctifying the transformation from mortal to eternal. Osiris's influence is everywhere in the rites. His myth of death and resurrection is reenacted symbolically through offerings and prayers. The jed pillar, representing his backbone and stability, features prominently, serving as a symbol of hope and renewal. You can feel the solemnity as participants seek Osiris's favor for the deceased's rebirth. Ra's presence is equally vital. His solar journey underscores the cyclical nature of life and death, reminding mourners that each night's darkness is followed by the sun's triumphant return. Rituals often invoked Ra to guide the soul safely through the underworld's dangers, fighting alongside Anubis against malevolent forces. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some tomb inscriptions included humorous curses meant to ward off grave robbers' warnings, like "May your tongue be torn out if you disturb this resting place." It shows the Egyptians' practical concerns mixed with spiritual beliefs. Historians still debate the extent to which these funerary practices were uniform across Egypt, with variations in techniques, spells, and rituals depending on region, period, and social status. What remained constant, however, was the belief in an afterlife governed by these powerful gods. The rituals weren't just about the dead. They also reinforced social order and religious continuity among the living. Through ceremony, Egyptians connected with their ancestors, maintained Mat, and ensured cosmic harmony. You might imagine a young priest nervously fumbling with ritual tools, whispering, "Anubis, please don't let me mess this up," blending reverence with human vulnerability. Ultimately, these funerary rites reveal a civilization deeply concerned with death, yet profoundly hopeful, believing that through the combined powers of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra, life transcended its earthly limits. As you witness this sacred choreography, you understand that ancient Egyptian religion was a lived experience, where gods and humans met in moments of transition, binding past, present, and future. You find yourself immersed in the intricate relationship between the three gods and the natural world, the Nile, the desert, the sky that framed every moment of ancient Egyptian life. Imagine standing at the river's edge, watching the water ripple under the blazing sun, hearing the calls of birds overhead, and feeling the desert's dry heat just beyond the fertile banks. Anubis, Osiris, and Ra weren't just gods of abstract concepts, they were intimately tied to these landscapes, embodying the forces that shaped existence. Osiris's connection to the Nile is profound. The annual flooding of the river, depositing rich silt on the fields, was seen as a physical manifestation of Osiris's death and rebirth, a divine promise of fertility and renewal. Farmers depended on this flood, and rituals to honor Osiris sought to ensure its timely arrival. You can almost hear the songs sung during festivals, celebrating this life-giving miracle. Ra, of course, ruled the sky and the sun, his journey across the heavens marking time and the seasons. His light nurtured crops, warmed the earth, and chased away the cold shadows of night. The cycle of day and night mirrored the eternal struggle between order and chaos. Life and death, a cosmic rhythm that structured Egyptian life. Anubis, while primarily associated with death, was also linked to the desert's wild spaces where jackals roamed. These animals were both feared and respected, symbolizing the boundary between life and the afterlife. Anubis's presence signified protection during the perilous journey from the living world to the next. A fascinating fact: some ancient Egyptian texts describe the desert as a liminal space, a borderland between worlds, where Anubis guards and guides souls, ensuring safe passage through these dangerous realms. The desert was both physical and symbolic, a place of trial and transformation. Here's a quirky tidbit: jackals were sometimes thought to dig graves or watch over tombs, which probably inspired Anubis's jackal head. You can almost picture ancient Egyptians spotting a jackal lurking near a burial site and imagining a divine guardian silently standing watch. Historians still argue whether Anubis's jackal association came from actual animal behavior or symbolic interpretation. Regardless, it shows how closely the Egyptians observed their environment and wove natural elements into their spiritual worldview. The three gods together represent a complete cycle. Ra brings light and life, Osiris governs death and rebirth, and Anubis safeguards the passage between. Their domains overlap and interact, reflecting the interconnectedness of nature, death, and divine power. Art and architecture also embody these connections. Temples and tombs were often aligned with celestial bodies or natural features designed to harmonize with the land and sky. This fusion of nature and religion created a world where every element was alive with meaning. You might smile, imagining an ancient farmer joking, "If Ra forgets to rise tomorrow, I'm blaming Osiris for oversleeping." It's a reminder that even in a deeply spiritual culture, humor found a place. So, as you breathe in the scent of the Nile and feel the desert breeze, you realize that these gods were not distant myths, but living forces woven into the very fabric of Egyptian existence, guiding, protecting, and sustaining life in all its forms. You now find yourself witnessing the enduring legacy of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra, their influence rippling through time, shaping cultures far beyond ancient Egypt. Imagine walking through a modern museum, where ancient artifacts sit side by side with contemporary art inspired by these timeless gods. Their stories continue to fascinate, symbolizing themes of death, rebirth, justice, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. The Egyptian gods have inspired countless artistic works, from Renaissance paintings to modern fantasy novels and movies. Anubis, with his mysterious jackal head, appears in video games and comics, often as a guardian of the afterlife or a symbol of protection. Osiris's narrative of resurrection resonates universally, influencing religious thought and literature worldwide. Ra's symbolism of the sun and life's cyclical nature remains a potent metaphor in various spiritual traditions. One widely accepted fact: the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in the 19th century unlocked the secrets of hieroglyphics, reigniting global interest in Egyptian mythology and culture. This breakthrough allowed scholars to better understand the roles and stories of these gods, leading to a renaissance of Egyptology. Here's a quirky tidbit: some modern neo-pagan and occult groups incorporate Egyptian deities into their practices, blending ancient rituals with New Age spirituality. It's like these gods have been given new lives, adapting to contemporary seekers of meaning. Historians still debate the extent to which these ancient beliefs influenced later monotheistic religions, with some scholars tracing echoes of Osiris' death and resurrection in Christian theology. The lines between myth, history, and faith blur intriguingly here in popular culture. The image of Anubis often evokes mystery and protection. Osiris embodies justice and eternal life, and Ra symbolizes power and renewal. Their stories continue to be retold, reimagined, and revered, demonstrating the timeless human fascination with life's biggest questions. Museums worldwide house treasures depicting these gods' golden amulets, elaborately painted coffins, and monumental statues that remind us of a civilization that saw divinity in every aspect of life and death. Visiting such collections can feel like stepping back into a world where myth and reality danced seamlessly. You might chuckle picturing an ancient Egyptian-themed comic book where Ra complains about modern solar technology. Back in my day, the sun was the only power you needed. It's a fun reminder that these gods still spark creativity and imagination. The endurance of these deities speaks to the power of storytelling and the human desire to understand existence through myth. Anubis, Osiris, and Ra continue to captivate because their themes of protection, justice, life, death, and renewal are eternal. As you reflect on their legacy, you see how these gods have transcended time and culture, offering wisdom and inspiration to all who seek to comprehend the mysteries of life and the cosmos. Now, as your journey with Anubis, Osiris, and Ra nears its gentle close, you find yourself reflecting on the profound lessons these gods embody: life, death, transformation, and the eternal dance between light and shadow. Imagine the sun dipping below the horizon, casting long golden hues across the desert sands, while the jackal's silhouette fades into the night, and Osiris's green form waits patiently in the lush fields of the afterlife. Together, these deities remind you that endings are never final and that every cycle invites renewal. The myths you've walked through aren't just ancient stories, they're reflections of universal human experiences. Osiris's resurrection offers hope that life transcends physical death. Anubis's vigilant protection shows the importance of guidance and care in moments of transition. Ra's unwavering journey across the sky teaches resilience and the promise of a new day, no matter how dark the night. One well-known fact: Egyptian funerary customs, including mummification and elaborate tombs, were designed to honor this cycle of death and rebirth, underscoring the deep spiritual importance of these gods' roles. A quirky insight: Egyptians sometimes imagined the afterlife as a kind of idyllic version of earthly life, complete with farming, feasting, and even playing games, proof that even in the afterlife, fun mattered. So yes, the afterlife wasn't just a solemn affair, but a continuation of joy, Historians still debate the details of these beliefs and practices, as variations emerged across centuries and regions, reflecting the evolving nature of faith in ancient Egypt. But the core message remains clear: the cycle of life, death, and renewal is sacred. The intertwining roles of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra illustrate a beautifully balanced system: protection, judgment, and cosmic order working in harmony. This trinity shapes not only religious thought but the very worldview of a civilization that flourished along the Nile for millennia. As you watch the stars appear, you understand that these gods continue to shine in the human imagination, inspiring wonder and offering comfort in the face of life's mysteries. They invite you to embrace change, honor the past, and look forward to the light beyond darkness. So, as your eyes grow heavy and the world quiets, let these ancient tales soothe you, reminding you that just like Ra's sun, your journey is part of an eternal cycle, always moving forward, always promising a new dawn. The day's adventures have slowly faded into a soft glow, your mind resting on the echoes of ancient tales and timeless gods. As the sun sets beyond the horizon of your thoughts, you feel the gentle presence of Anubis, Osiris, and Ra comforting. Trio watching over the cycles of life and death, guarding your dreams as they traverse the realms beyond. Breathe deeply, allowing the quiet hum of the night to settle around you like a soft cloak. The warmth of Ra's light still lingers, a reminder that after every darkness comes renewal. Osiris's calm green gaze invites you to trust in transformation, that endings birth beginnings, and Anubis's steady watch ensures you are protected. Through every transition, seen and unseen, feel your body relax, muscles unwinding as the story's rhythms slow, matching your own heartbeat. The desert breeze carries whispers of ancient prayers, while the Nile's gentle flow sings a lullaby of continuity and peace. You are part of this eternal dance, where myths become memories, and memories become dreams. There is no rush here, just the soft passage of time, like Ra's bark moving steadily through the night sky, carrying hope through shadow toward dawn. Let your thoughts drift with it, light as feathers floating on a breeze. Remember, as you close your eyes, the god stories are not just ancient history, they are alive within you, woven into the fabric of your dreams and your waking moments. They remind you that even in the darkest night, the sun will rise again. Now, let the quiet embrace you fully. The stars are watching, the night is waiting, and your journey has just begun. Sweet dreams.